So 2024 has kicked off with an interesting change in how we might sell stuff. And I don't mean through my Backyard Bullion Buyers Club, but I mean generally we are now facing much more reporting to our tax authorities on anything that we might sell through any platform. We can theoretically have all of that data reported to HMRC, and some people out there might end up being stung by some unexpected taxes that they really should be aware of right now. So in today's video, I want to go through some of my interpretations of the system right now, how it is, what we do, and how we can make sure that we're following the rules and doing things correctly and paying what we have to pay, but also making sure that we don't get it wrong. Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and welcome to our first precious metal ramble of 2024. So there are a few different posts flying around various social media platforms about some changes to tax reporting and selling stuff, whether it be precious metals or just old bits of clothing or whatever it is. If you're selling on platforms like eBay or anywhere, quite frankly, you may have to start thinking about doing a tax form. And that might sound scary, and it might sound ridiculous, and it might sound like the government just trying to get their grubby little hands on as much money as they possibly can. But it's not always as scary as some people think, and I'm here to hopefully give you all a little bit of insight on my interpretations of a lot of the things that are going on. Please bear in mind that I am not a qualified tax advisor. I am simply sharing my interpretations of how things run for me for the last couple of years, because these are not new things that have come in. There are not new measures that put restrictions in place on how much you can sell as a private person. These have been there for a while. The difference is, and this is the thing that a lot of people are not a fan of, is that these platforms, eBay, Amazon, wherever it may be, Facebook Marketplace, are now required by law to give HMRC, our tax authority here in the UK, information about the sales that you make. And if you have sales of over £1,000, which, as you can think about, if you sell a gold coin, you're already over that limit. And that's not profit, by the way, that's gross sales. Then you are required perhaps to register for taxes and register and put that information through on a tax form once a year. And failure to do so could potentially yield some fines or even potential other punishments. It'd be quite extreme for somebody to maybe get severely fined and sent to prison for those kind of things, but you know, if you are systematically doing it over a long period of time and you are proven to be a kind of tax fraud, tax cheat, then you could be in some serious trouble. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of people who take this very not seriously. So without further ado, let's dive in and have a look at some of these basic things. Now, the first thing to say is a reminder again that I am not a financial advisor or guru or a full tax advisor. I'm just sharing my interpretations of things. Now, in the UK, if you are just selling something as a hobby, if you're just thinking I'm going to make a little bit of extra money on the side, you have what's called a trading allowance. You have up to £1,000 per year that you can just sell and you don't have to worry about it. You should probably keep some records to make sure you don't go over that £1,000, but you don't need to make any registrations, you don't need to make any tax forms, you don't need to pay any tax on any of that income as long as it's £1,000 or less. But that's not a lot. That can be eaten up quite quickly. As I said, if you sell a singular gold coin at an ounce, or even not even an ounce now, 3/4 of an ounce, you're going to be instantly over that. And you might say, well, hang on, I'm just a guy selling some of my collection. I'm just a guy who's cashing out on an investment. Well, yes, you may well be, and you may need to actually keep records of why you think that is the case, because HMRC might come back and say otherwise. They might say, well, actually, we think you're trading this stuff. We think you're acting as a business. We think it's a hobby income. But it is also important from a capital gains tax perspective as well. So if HMRC had their grubby little fingers on every single little piece of data, they might be able to see that if you sold a non-capital gains exempt coin, let's call it this giant, great big 100 soles coin for, what did I pay for it? Nearly £2,500. If you sold this on eBay, you could argue, or HMRC could argue, well, if you bought that 10 years ago, you may have made a profit on it. And they would like to know whether or not that is a capital gains profit. And you would maybe then have to look to pay some tax or declare it. So that's a big thing. However, if you are selling something that's capital gains tax exempt, like a Britannia or some sovereigns, then that's not really required to have the capital gain. Well, it's not required. You don't have to even declare it on your tax form. However, you might still have to register for tax and make sure that you're putting on there the information so that everybody's above board about what it is you're doing. At the moment, the capital gains side of things on our tax system is very much an honour-based system. If you had only Gold Britannias and you sell all your Gold Britannias, then you've really got nothing to worry about. But if you've got a mix of everything and you just sell something and there's £1,500 that comes into your bank account from eBay, HMRC will now know what that is going to be from and for, and eBay will be required to pass that detail over there. Now, a lot of people don't like that intrusion in their privacy, but ultimately, if you're avoiding tax in a kind of proper way, that's fine. But if you're actually evading tax, I think it's evading tax that's the wrong one. I think it is avoiding tax and evading tax are two very different things. And if you are deliberately misleading HMRC with the reports on or the data that you're putting in there, you're going to be in some serious trouble at some point down the line. So very much worth thinking about how you as an individual may be looking to sell some of your precious metals in the future. If you've got a large selection of different coins and they're all individual types, and then you're going to say, well, I'm just going to start up a little shop and start selling them all. Perhaps that would be looked at from HMRC as setting up a small business, and a lot of that inventory will suddenly become essentially taxable. So for those that maybe don't really understand how it all works, let's do a really dumbed down crash course into the different taxes that you might be liable for if you're buying and selling gold and silver. So if you're just a private investor and you've put £10,000 into some silver, you've bought, let's call it a range of silver Britannias and silver bars. The Britannias are capital gains exempt. Let's say in 10 years' time you sell them all in one go to a dealer at a profit. There's a very good argument to be said there that you're just still a private investor. You bought a bunch of stuff at the start, you've sold it all at the other end. The dealer will have that record of what you've paid, what they paid for you, and you'll be able to work out profit that you've made on the stuff that's capital gains exempt and the stuff that is capital gains taxable. And then theoretically, you should use the honour system to go ahead and put that into your tax form, or register for tax if you need to, and then put that into your capital gains exemption pages, basically. However, if you start selling all of those things that you've bought over a long time, and you start selling them individually on eBay, and you start, doing it on a fairly regular basis, you could still argue that you're just a private investor collector looking to cash out on a slower basis. That's absolutely fine. Make sure you've got the records to prove it, though. Make sure that you've got the ability to say to HMRC, if they ever came to you with a big, rotten, nasty red letter saying, hey, we think that you're doing something wrong here, say to them, no, look, I've owned these for like 15 years. I've had pride in their ownership, and these are now just being sold slowly over time. I'm not a business honest governor. Then you should be absolutely fine. Excuse me. Now, if on the other hand you are buying lots of silver really quickly and selling it really quickly, you're trading. Let's be quite frank, you are trading. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm just selling my investments early. I'm buying and selling. If you're buying and selling to make a profit in a quick, short space of time, HMRC can and probably will quite quickly say that that is in fact trading. And then you'll be required to pay income tax on the profits. And you'll be required to do tax forms for that. You could even be required to register as self-employed for HMRC. And that's ultimately what myself and a lot of other small dealers do. If you're a sole trader, if you are somebody who's not operating as a limited company, you have to sign up as a sole trader, as a sole trader self-employed person on HMRC. And you have to keep your books, you have to do your bookkeeping, you have to make sure that all adds up. You have to be conscious of things like VAT registration thresholds and things that are taxable, things that are not taxable. So from my perspective, I have an interesting situation because I run a business. I run a business where I buy in raw material, I manufacture a product and I sell it. I also have private investments, which I have here. So I have two very distinct and clear record-keeping platforms when it comes to both the business and my personal stuff. And if and when I sell something that is of that personal stack and nature, it will be very much recorded along those lines. If it's a business sale, it goes on the business books. If it's a personal sale, it goes on my personal books. Because even the smallest of traders out there, and by no means am I huge, I stay under the VAT registration threshold for a reason, because it's bloody awful to be on over it. We've been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. It is not fun. So we will not do that. But to keep records is really important, because inevitably one day HMRC might come back and say, hey, can you just show us what's been going on? And that is something that's really important to factor in. And a lot of the time people maybe will think, I can do this on the side to make a little bit of money, and they might buy a tube of Britannias, sell it, and make 20 quid and think that's 20 quid in the bank. But you've sold £580 worth of silver with a tube of Britannias. Do it twice and you're required to put that information through the HMRC system. And theoretically, you're required to pay taxes on some of the profit that you've earned there as well. So really worth having a look at if you are a private individual who's maybe looking to do some things on the side. If you are a hobbyist and you are a fledgling kind of coin shifter, you really need to pay attention to this, because now there will be requirements for various different platforms to provide that data directly to HMRC. And let me tell you, they will, and HMRC will crack down on it. I think it's quite interesting. Now, another little thing, which is on the same lines, which I've been hearing a lot of lately, if you have, in the UK, simply £20,000 in a savings account earning 5%, that yields you more than £1,000 worth of interest in your bank. And that also triggers a period where you would then required to do a tax form. So there are lots of different pitfalls out there that you need to do. Taxes are taxes. They will always happen, and you cannot evade them, I think is probably the right term. I can never remember if it's avoidance or evasion. I think it's the evasion which is illegal. Tax avoidance, where you can mitigate some of the taxes that you owe by legitimate reasons of making, business purchases and losses and things like that, putting it against your books. But tax evasion, I think, is where you just plainly don't report things correctly, or you misreport things, or you put the wrong data in. There is definitely some no-nos when it comes to that. So what I would suggest as a sort of recourse for anyone out there who is concerned about this, I would say your best course of action is to simply look to take as best detailed bookkeeping as possible. Even if it's just on an Excel spreadsheet, you can use much more complicated software than Excel, but I would highly recommend at a very minimum that you look to start keeping some really good records about what you're buying, when you're buying it, how you're buying it, where you're buying it from. Have a look up on HMRC, or just Google the badges of trade and ask yourself, do you qualify as an investor, as a private individual investor rather than a business trader? Because there are going to be, I think, a lot more people caught out by this over the coming years. I think that, it's something that a lot of people will have to factor into how they run their own individual stacks and investing, and how they might look to exit their stacks at the other end of its lifetime. There is definitely some hard times ahead for some people who maybe do owe a lot of tax and perhaps haven't been reporting it properly. And I would highly recommend that if you haven't, then you start doing that, and maybe you seek the advice of a qualified tax advisor or accountant to help you with that process. So yeah, interesting stuff. I haven't really commented on the fact that it's a bit of an intrusion into one's life being reported on like this, but quite frankly, I don't like this argument. You've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to hide. If you're doing it right, that's fine. I can't stand when I see other people out there doing things wrong and cheating the system almost flagrantly and blatantly. It just annoys me, because you work really hard and you do all of the right things and you pay all of your dues, and you do bookkeeping and it takes bloody ages to do, and then other people just do willy-nilly and they don't care. And it's just like a big middle finger, in my opinion, to that, which I think is silly. So it's one of those things, each to their own, I suppose. But yes, have a look into it if you're concerned. I'll link down in the description box below some information on the HMRC's website, where you can find out more about this little £1,000 trading allowance, but really worth looking at. Highly recommend that you go and check out some more of this information. So let me know your thoughts on this. Of course, it varies from country to country. I have no idea what the US requirements might be for this, but be aware that various different tax authorities will get their way eventually. They will want to get their grubby hands on as much as they can. That's the nature of tax and taxation. Ultimately, I don't mind paying tax because it's kind of a good thing. You keep society rolling around and ticking over, but it's not fun to pay tax. You have to pay tax. It's one of those things in life. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Otherwise, that's it from me. A big thank you to you all for watching, especially to my Cool Kids Club members and the Backyard Bullion Ramblers Society. And if you've enjoyed our tangential ramble about taxes and keeping safe when selling, then make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. And quite frankly, if you're watching to the 14th minute of my video and you're not subscribed, then you have some serious issues and you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Just do it. Hit it now. Fantastic. Thank you one and all. We'll see you on the next video. As always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.